call this July 16th, 2014 meeting of the City of Santa Barbara Airport Commission to order. Roll call, please.
Bruce Miller.
Here.
Kirk Martin. Craig Arcuri.
Here.
Patricia Griffin.
Here.
Carl Hopkins. Karen Kahn.
Here.
Jim Wilson.
Here. Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Chair Miller, I would like to pull items 7 and 8. We have an error in our recommendation miswording, and so we'll pull those and bring it back next month.
All right. We will remove items 7 and 8 from the consent calendar. Any other changes? Nope. We'll move on to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission on a subject matter within its jurisdiction. 15 minutes. Any speaker slips?
No
Any
s-
speakers?
No
All right.
speaker slips.
Thank you. Move on to notices. On Friday, July 11th at 5:30 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board of Airport Administration. We have the minutes. We have a recommendation to waive the reading and approve the minutes. The meeting June 18th.
So moved. Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes as presented?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. And that brings us to the consent calendar. We have a lease agreement with Swiss Designs Construction, a lease agreement with Easy Lift Transportation, a lease agreement with Freedom Photonics. We've removed items 7 and 8 having to do with Fuel Farm and the property management report.
I move the consent calendar be approved as presented.
Second.
All in favor of approving the consent calendar?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the consent calendar as amended is approved. Thank you. Liaison reports. I don't see any city liaisons. All right. I guess that takes us to administrative reports. We have a presentation on the Airport Visitor Information Center, I believe.
Yes, Commission, I just wanted to give you sort of the first year in review on the visitor information booth that we have in the airline terminal. You'll recall last year we entered into an agreement with the Santa Barbara Chamber of Commerce to provide staffing, supervision, and volunteer coordination. And the airport is providing or has provided the booth. We also provided a laptop computer for their use, and we'll be also buying some more racks for information purposes. But it's been really successful. I think this first year we currently have 22 volunteers working 2-hour shifts. They provide information and reports to us on a periodic basis, and some of the stories are just heartwarming, and some of them are, oh my goodness, why can't they get the luggage there on time? But it really has been fun having them there, and I know that the travelers enjoy it, and they answer all kinds of questions, not just on what's going on in town, but how to get downtown in some cases. They also keep some statistics for us, and as the year goes by and as we get more sophisticated, we'll be bringing some reports back to Commission just with reports of what they're finding and where the travelers are coming from. I think that's a fun thing to know, as well as information for our Air Service Committee. The suggestions have been things that we've heard before: better luggage handling, which I hope they are doing better with that. Of course, a full restaurant and bar downstairs, and better Wi-Fi. And I think you'll recall we had that complaint, and we took action with that with our information systems group, and Tracy coordinated that. So I think we have improved the Wi-Fi service in the terminal. But overall, it's been a good year, and with that, we're going to do another purchase order with the chamber to continue their supervision of the program for another year. So that's my report. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer.
One question, Hazel. You mentioned that they're asking the passengers where they're coming from. Is it the declining passengers?
Yes, because they're located in bag claim.
Ah.
So as folks come down to get their baggage, they walk right by the information booth and stop and say hello and,
It never occurred to me that we don't have that data from some other. from
oh, we
airlines.
do.
We do? Oh, okay.
We do. We have the leakage study with our air service
Ah,
consultant.
okay, all right.
Very detailed
got
information,
it.
but on a personal
Right, understood.
basis,
Okay,
just
thank
ask,
you.
yeah.
Can I ask what the funding is, or is there a fee from the Chamber of Commerce to provide this service, or how does that work?
Yes, we are paying the Chamber of Commerce for their staff. Anne Marie Rogers is one. She kind of oversees the whole program, and she does the visitor center downtown as well, and the cruise ships and that sort of thing. And then Marcy Pearson is the real coordinator of the volunteers. And so we pay the Chamber approximately $14,000 for those services.
I noticed the one item of interest was a restaurant accessible to the public. And I've had several people comment to me, "You're a commissioner, get us a restaurant that we can use." So there is public interest in that.
There is indeed, and tomorrow actually I'm meeting with the concessionaire for the restaurant, and there has been, or she has been planning to increase the services downstairs to include wine and beer sales and a different menu for food. So, but a full-on restaurant downstairs, I don't think we have the passenger traffic to accommodate that. But really what they're asking for is to go upstairs. And unfortunately, as you know, if you don't have a ticket, that's not going to happen. So, yeah, we will talk about it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions, comments? All right, well, sounds like very valuable service. Thank you. Item 11, a presentation on the Property Management Division.
Well, this is a continuation of our airport staff presentations, and generally you know Rebecca, and you've listened to her presentations on different leases and on our rates and charges throughout the years. But we also have Desi with us tonight, so I'd like for them both to introduce themselves and hope you enjoyed their presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Fribley. I'm the Senior Property Management Specialist.
And my name is Desi. I've been working with Hazel for almost 10 years. I'm the administrative assistant for the department.
So we're going to start off tonight giving you an idea of the personnel involved with the Business and Properties Division. We have an Administrative Analyst 1, Tom Bullers, an Administrative Specialist, Desi, an Administrative Assistant, Lynn Goodnick, who does a lot of work with our business licenses and insurance and also works up at the front desk, myself, and then we all report to the Assistant Airport Director position, which is currently vacant. So we now have the pleasure of reporting directly to the Airport Director, Hazel. And our program's mission is to manage the fixed assets to ensure the airport's economic self-sufficiency and maintain a strong financial position through prudent fiscal management. The division responsibilities include, amongst other things, negotiating and administering leases, advertising vacant properties, administering the department accounts receivable program, coordinating tenant maintenance requests with the maintenance division, assuring tenant compliance with insurance and city business license requirements, and providing possessory interest information for the county tax assessor. We currently have 50 buildings that we manage, including approximately 300,000 leasable square feet. This year we had 93.6% of those buildings leased on average, which is down 2.5% from the previous year. And the reason for that, of course, is that we know that we had 2 large maintenance hangars, a restaurant, and a former tire shop, all of which have been vacant for a fairly long period of time. In terms of land, we manage 109 acres or 4,800,000 leasable square feet. 98.6% of that was leased this year on average. So we stayed just about the same as we had the previous year. The airport has a real diverse group of tenants. We have approximately 162 tenants at this point and 192 agreements that we manage. Some tenants have more than one space, so therefore they have more than one agreement. We have airlines and the terminal concessionaires, including the parking, the rental cars, the gift shop, and the newsstand, and the restaurant. We also manage general aviation activities, flight schools, maintenance, and all of the other associated FBOs that fall into that group. And then we have commercial industrial leases, which include office spaces, warehouse spaces, industrial R&D spaces, and also land uses. We negotiated 55 agreements. Some of those were with existing tenants, some were with new tenants in calendar year 2013. And we thought it might be interesting for you to learn a little bit about some of the unique tenant uses that we have here on the airport. We do have a company that has an office on the airport that sells and manufactures drones. We have another company that produces acoustic sensors that are used undersea in robots, and this particular company, in fact, had robots out looking for the Malaysian aircraft that went down. It also was instrumental in looking for JFK Jr.'s plane when that went down. We have the State of California Crime Lab. We have a company that lays underwater communications cable on the seafloor, and a company that produces shock detection sensors. Greenridge Sciences is one of the interesting companies that we have on the airport. They do environmental research and consult with a number of other companies. They study and monitor acoustic impacts on marine life, and they've been used to monitor beluga whales, seals, and sharks. They've been used by over 16 marine research and engineering organizations located in the United States and abroad, not only for the study of protected species, but also for marine geophysics. They develop underwater vehicles or assist in that. They do training, and they monitor offshore oil production facilities. And Greenridge has been with us since 1989. Okay, this is the company Aerobat that does the drones, and we are going to attempt to have a video. We're going to have a brief second here while this loads.
I was just going to say, how's our Wi-Fi?
Yeah. Getting better all the time.
Oh, good.
Getting well.
Get some of that equipment from the terminal.
We're getting a little technical
Maybe this
support
is the
here.
wrong
Nothing in nature is more perfect than a circle. With the Geobat, we've gone back to the wisdom of nature. It has a compact structure, which allows high maneuverability. It's virtually indestructible, and it's hard to detect from the ground due to the small size.
The advantage of the Geobat design is that it's circular. I can put sensors around a circle, and any position around that circle will allow me to look in the direction I want to look. In previous systems, I had to use a gimbal. With the size of the sensors rapidly decreasing, I can use multiple sensors on the periphery of the circle and perform effectively the function of the gimbal, replacing all the weight of the gimbal by some. Useful.
The Geobat can be fitted with a variety of sensors. It uses the most advanced sensors today.
Technical difficulties.
Yes, we have some technical difficulties. It's unfortunately, it's not loading as fast as it's playing.
we're going inverted here.
One of the uses would be for RF communications as a relay point. An aircraft, a Geobat, could be circling overhead over a home position and relaying information over the horizon to other RPAs, remote piloted aircraft. The EchoTrack for the Geobat is different than anything else out there. For one, it uses multi-core processing. This board itself has 12 sensors on there. It monitors airspeed, air pressure, altitude. GPS is actually integrated on the autopilot board. Has magnetometer for direction, basically a compass, and then it has a 3-axis gyroscope and accelerometers for attitude. So this one board does everything that an autopilot needs to do and more.
Our previous experiences provide us the ability to take all this knowledge and integrate it into a solution for a mission, whatever that may be. Whether it's scaring birds away from the golf course, or whether it's a military mission that requires some highly complex application of what we can do with these aircraft.
And Teledyne Reson is another one of our tenants. They're actually headquartered in Denmark, but they've had a research and development facility here at the airport for quite a while, and actually were in this building at one time. They were founded in 1970. They have a global presence on 6 continents, and they design, install, and service underwater sonar systems. I think what you're looking at is called a CBAT, and that was one of the instruments that was used to hunt for the Malaysian airliner. And they take, oh, this is the I'm sorry, this is the Odyssey Marine Exploration device used for deep ocean shipwreck exploration. They have another device, or several of them, that are a series of devices called CBATs that also do similar types of things. And now I'm going to turn it over to Desi to explore the exciting world of statistics.
Yes, I'm aware that statistics can put some of us to sleep, but business statistics we use as a key tool in decision making. We use the information in our budget forecasting, in rate setting, in our performance goal setting to identify new revenue sources. And we find that it provides us a better explanation of what happens in the environment. Some of what we track, compile, analyze, and look for trends for is the passenger movement and tower operations. We also track our rental car revenues and customer facility charges. We look at parking revenues per enplaned passengers. We track our concession revenues, and it was really interesting to see that about 35% of what the restaurant generates per month comes from the sale of alcohol and concession and coffee and pastries. So some trivia. We also, this would just show you historical information on enplanements and deplanements at Santa Barbara Airport. And you can see what the trend has been. So far through June, we're at 330,000 or 331,000 enplaned passengers. This we use as well when we do our rate setting for the airlines. And we use it as well when we forecast for our federal grant entitlement money. The Business and Properties Division also administers the management contract for the public parking facilities. So we look at revenues closely. We also track our expenditures each month, and we audit the parking expenditures. But this year you can see that we had a slight dip in revenue in 2011 and 2012. So we always look for explanations, and if you remember, back then we had a few things going on at the same time. We had the relocation of the historic terminal, we had the reconfiguration of the terminal loop road. So all of this had a fiscal impact, and we've made a fine recovery in 2013, and this year we are pretty much on the same level as last year in terms of revenues from the parking operation. Additional business activity indicators that we monitor are landing fees activities from general aviation, from the commercial air carriers, from the freighters. We look at landed weights, load factors, freight, FAA tower operations, and the consumer price index also ties in with our lease administration, with our commercial industrial leases and annual rental increases. So these are just some examples of what we look at and analyze each month. And a lot of this information is very useful to our tenants as well. Each month we update the rent-a-cars on how they're doing as far as market share. We also send updates to the fixed base operators, to MAG Aviation on fuel sales, and passenger counts to the Chamber of Commerce and the Santa Barbara Travel Bureau. So now we are on to accounts receivable. This is also under the Business and Properties Management Program. And I'd like just to give you a brief overview. The City of Santa Barbara had been using a program to manage its fiscal activities and financial assets. And that was just recently replaced. They did a bid, and there were 2 vendors that they selected who did demonstrations to a group of subject matter experts, pretty much users from the City Finance Department and Human Resources, Treasury. So we picked one of them, and this project went live this year in January. The system is cloud-based, so everything is online. And it was implemented in different phases. The last one will be sometime towards the end of the year, and this would be useful to HR and payroll, but we've already started using it successfully. A little bit more about the system. To a lot of us, it's friendlier than what we had before. It allows for fund reports on the fly as far as year-to-date budget numbers, aging reports, what we look for pretty much every month to see if we have any delinquent payers. The system also has an easier document storage system and retrieval. As I mentioned, everything is online, which makes for an easier audit trail. And also there's a tighter system to monitor budget transactions and reporting through the new system. And now on to the FAA grants program. As I mentioned earlier, when we look at passenger movement, the data is very critical to us because it allows us to forecast for entitlement funds. For example, for fiscal year 2015, we anticipate to receive about $2.7 million in FAA funds, and that's based on calendar employments for 2013. So it runs like 2 years behind. We submit all of our requests for reimbursements through a program that was implemented by the Department of Transportation. It's called Delphi. And it was designed to automate the process of the grant payments process and to allow all the grant recipients to request and submit their reimbursements electronically. The Business and Properties Department manages the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise and Airport Concession Disadvantaged Business Goals and Accomplishments program. This program was designed to ensure that small businesses can compete fairly for federally funded projects. And right now, we have 2 of our concessionaires who are registered and certified as DBEs. One is our terminal restaurant concession, and the second one is our flight information display systems vendor, that's Prodigic. And also what's interesting, our rent-a-car concessionaires, they submit reports to the FAA for participation, DBE participation and accomplishments that's based on their good faith efforts. And last year, Avis and Budget Group, they purchased a great number of their fleet vehicles from a DB certified vendor in Santa Monica. And last, our division coordinates the city and FAA audits and works closely with city engineers and planners and city finance staff to make sure that we are in compliance with all the federal regulations. Performance measures, which you're probably familiar with, just a brief overview. Those were created to help city departments set measurable goals and to help them improve operations and business practices. The P3s are incorporated into our budget. They're reviewed biannually. They are also available online to the public, so anybody can have access to them. And they're very helpful in helping the public understand how government works and how the public can be involved in government policy. This was our division project objective for the fiscal year. It was to develop a request for proposal for commercial businesses providing support services for general aviation users using the FBO's development parcels proposed in the master plan. And a little bit further on P3s, just a glimpse, those are some of the additional measurable objectives and program measures that we set. A lot of these we track, we set targets, budget targets that we try to achieve by the end of the fiscal year. We look at our revenue sources from commercial industrial leases, from terminal related assets, from general aviation activities. We also track the revenue, as I mentioned earlier, for food and beverage and gift shop per plane passenger. Our target, for example, and I hope that's of interest to you, for this fiscal year was $2.15 from news and gifts revenue per in-plane passenger. And by the end of the third quarter, we've exceeded it by 20 cents. So we're at $2.47. And then the target for food and beverage revenue per in-plane passenger was set at $3.25, and by the end of the third quarter of the fiscal year, we are generating $3.88 per in-plane passenger. And the last bullet point has to do with solar energy production, and this is from our quick turnaround facility. So we've set a target of 220,000 kilowatt hours of pure energy for the fiscal year, and it seems like we're pretty on track with that.
Just to complete our presentation, we thought we might throw in a few fun facts about airport properties. 98% of airport revenue is derived from fees and rentals. We have 29 businesses that have been with the airport for 20 years or more. NST, who was formerly EG&G and Commissioner Wilson was employed there at one time, has been at the airport for 55 years. The largest number of leases we've ever negotiated in a single year was 99, and that was in 2010. The airport removes 2 to 4 beehives a year at an average of 10 to 12,000 bees each. And that's because our buildings only require a little tiny hole and they get into the walls and start creating honey. And the city has a policy of live removal. So we have a specialist that comes in, captures the queen, actually opens up the wall, removes the honey, cleans it, takes the whole hive and as many bees as he can collect with the queen, and moves them to a new hive location. Does anyone have any questions about the presentation?
I have to ask if there's any revenue from the honey?
No, but we do have a tenant,
Who
San
does
Marcos
honey.
Farms, who makes honey and
Sells it at the market.
and sells it, and also beeswax candles.
Yes,
never a
and it was
boring
53
day.
years ago that I was employed by EG&G.
Just out of curiosity, thank you very much for that report. The fees per passenger for food and concessions, that's gross revenue as reported by the concessionaires, or is that something that, is it a portion of that the airport is receiving, or is that just a measure of how well they're doing per passenger?
Well, the measurements are based on their gross sales. So
Okay.
it's based on their concession sales and then the total in-plane passengers.
Got it. So that's kind of a metric with,
Mhm.
you know, are people eating there, and is the revenue going up? And our arrangement with the concessionaires is kind of a monthly, just it's a lease like everything else, or is there some revenue sharing thing with the city?
It's a lease that also includes a percentage of sales.
Oh, it does. So
Yes.
we have a vested interest in addition to helping that number.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's a very common metric that's used by most airports to determine how well they're doing in terms of their revenue per passenger vis-a-vis other airports.
So hungry passengers are good revenue.
And quite frankly, it depends, their revenues are affected when flights depart. Very early morning flights, they really don't receive a lot of revenue
Right.
because people just want coffee, are really not ready to sit down to a full-on breakfast at 4:30 in the morning.
Right.
I mean, some folks might be, but generally they're not. But if in the afternoon when we have high load factors for larger aircraft, Denver and Frontier, in Phoenix, I guess, that's when they're all hovering around lunchtime, and that's where they're really making money. I mean, now, you wouldn't think that, but you know, concessions at airports are just different.
Thank you.
It was my recollection that the revenue per enplaned has increased substantially since the new terminal, hasn't it?
Yes.
That's correct. I believe it's up almost a third
Or double.
over, yeah,
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is due to the fact that the concessions are now located post-security, so that the passengers can go up and relax and look for a magazine or a book, have something to eat, and they've already checked through, they're in there, they're not worried about missing their flight. So that has really helped substantially, even though we do have folks that are meeters and greeters that would prefer to have more of those services downstairs. I think the revenue reflects the fact that putting it upstairs post-security was a good decision.
Good.
Other questions? Well, an excellent report. Thank you. You all are very busy.
Thank you.
And okay, item 12, lease agreement with Above All Aviation.
Yes, and Ms. Rebecca will be making the presentation on this report.
Okay, we have before you tonight a lease agreement for a 2-year term with Above All Aviation. As you'll recall, back in September of 2013, 2 of the maintenance hangars on the field reverted to the city. And subsequently, on October 2013, we went out with an RFP for GA maintenance for those hangars based on the fact that that was the purpose of the hangars when they were initially constructed, and that had been the way that historically they had been used. Subsequently, we discovered that the feeling on the field generally was that it was too big a facility to use for just GA maintenance, and that the proposer that was a successful proposer actually intended to do other things other than just GA maintenance. So we went back to the GA subcommittee and discussed the situation and decided that the only fair way to proceed was to actually cancel that particular RFP and reissue a new one allowing multiple services. Our feeling was that there might have been some people that had multiple services been allowed under the initial RFP. We might have had additional proposers. So in May, we reissued the RFP and did it for multiple service providers. The opportunity was an 18,691 square foot premises consisting mostly of ramp with a 3,500 square foot hangar and a 3,000 square foot hangar on the property. It came with 6 tie-down spaces and 7 parking spaces, and the base rent is $4,016 per month, and that is an aviation facilities zone. We advertised the RFP on our website, on the SWAI website, and also sent out individual invitations to bid to aviation businesses on the field. On May 27th, we did a mandatory pre-bid meeting that was attended by 3 proposers, and we received 1 proposal from Above All Aviation. Above All has been a tenant here at the field since 2010. They operate a flight school currently. On Signature's leasehold, they provide flight instruction, aircraft rental, and pilot supplies, and they maintain their own aircraft. The permitted uses for this facility include offices, storage, aircraft maintenance, flight training, aircraft rental and brokerage, air charter and air taxi, and aircraft management. Above All intends to continue to provide flight instruction, aircraft rental, and maintain aircraft, but they're also proposing to lease the tie-downs, do aircraft brokerage and management services, and in the future they would like the option to expand their use to include charter and air taxi operations and avionics services. They're intending to expand their hours of operation from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. 7 days a week for flight training and maintenance overflow. So our recommendation tonight is, having researched their references and found that their proposal meets all the criteria established in the RFP, including their experience and technical qualifications, financial references, and a business plan and proposed budget, we're recommending that the Airport Commission authorize the airport director to execute a 2-year lease agreement with Above All Aviation, Inc., a California C Corporation, effective August 1st, 2014, and ending July 31st, 2016, for 18,691 square feet of aviation ramp, including one 3,522 square foot hangar and one 3,000 square foot hangar at 101 Cyril Hartley Place, for a monthly rental of $4,016 per month, exclusive of utilities.
Just to clarify, this is the old Stratman?
This is correct.
Just a couple questions. One was, I was mostly curious, I guess. It states maintaining their owned and leased aircraft as one of the purposes. Is there an expectation that they would be doing general maintenance beyond just their own aircraft?
Yes, that is correct. They're intending to continue to do some of their flight school activities in Building 313, which they sublease from Signature Flight Support, and move some of the activities that are currently being done in Hangar 1 over to the former Stratman hangars. We actually have representatives here from Above All Aviation. Do you have anything you'd like to add? No.
So just to be clear, is that maintenance to the general public?
That's correct.
Okay.
They will be maintaining general aircraft. They'll also be storing aircraft in that area. I believe the flight simulator is going to be moving over there from Hangar 1.
Okay.
So there'll be a combination of activities in the 2 hangars.
Well, that's great. Yeah, there's certainly an accepted need to continue a strong light aircraft maintenance presence on the field. So that's included, even though it's not mentioned in this document, that is in the lease.
That's
Okay.
correct.
And then I guess the other standard question would be the rental rate. How was that arrived at through?
It's arrived at by the aviation square footage rental that was calculated a number of years ago, starting out by appraisal, and where we've ended up over the years with CPI increases. It's comparable with the rates that are being paid by the FBOs. But it's less than was being paid when Stratman was there, because the airport has removed 14 tie-downs from the leasehold, and the airport gets the revenue from those directly.
Okay, so it's at market and
That's correct.
comparable to the other FBOs. Thank you.
Is there, excuse me, is there anything that they are prohibited from doing there? As
They
far as,
cannot work on helicopters. We're asking that that be a fixed-wing aircraft area only, both for storage. And the reason for that is with the GA tie-downs there, we took a look at it and determined that that was probably not a compatible use, because rotor wing aircraft kick up so much dust and small rocks and things that
Don't mix.
conceivably could harm some of the fixed wing aircraft, or chip paint, or, you know, leave a lot of debris. So it's just not a good place for rotary wing aircraft to take off. So we did ask in the RFP that this be a fixed wing facility.
would that exclude a helicopter that was brought in on a towable pad, which is the way most helicopters actually get moved into high-density areas?
It's something we could consider, but it's,
We did specifically exclude helicopters from this particular facility.
That was operating, or I think I heard you said maintenance as well. Is that correct?
They're excluded for maintenance,
All-
for storage, for operation.
Altogether?
Right. Mhm.
Okay. Any question? We have a motion?
I'd be thrilled to make a motion that we approve that sublease.
Second?
All in favor of approving the lease to Above All Aviation?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The motion is approved. And that brings us, and congratulations, by the way. And that brings us to the airport commercial industrial lease rates.
Exactly. Ms. Fribley will present our annual information on our commercial industrial rates.
and yeah, I know you wait for this every year.
Riveted.
Yep.
Absolutely riveted.
Well, since we don't have the integrated pest management report.
Oh, it's coming.
Well, since we had the opportunity to talk a little bit about what our division does, we've compacted and shortened this report a little bit. The FAA, as you know, requires that airports to maintain rentals at market rate, and we establish these rates annually based on the UCSB economic forecast, any appraisals that we may have of individual properties during the course of the year, and real estate comparables. The local commercial real estate market rates are beginning to recover. The economic forecast is still saying we're looking at about 2% per year. Consumer price index, interestingly enough, has not really recovered. We're still not back to the 3% minimum that we use to in our leases for rental adjustments. In the last year that we have records for, which was May to April of 2013, the average was running at about 2%. The economy has impacted the airport in a number of different ways. As you know, we've had 3 large vacant properties: the maintenance hangars, tire shop, and the restaurant location. I'm glad to say that the hangars and the tire shop are now leased, thanks to your previous action. And the tire shop location has been approved by City Council, so those leases are going forward. The restaurant remains vacant and is somewhat problematic because of the size of the building, and as you know, there are quite a number of smaller restaurant locations available currently in Goleta. So we have not at this point received an acceptable recommendation for the use of that building, and we will be meeting with the Radius Group to explore other possible options for that space. These were the comparables that we pulled out over a 6-week period from the April to approximately the middle of June. Industrial and R&D space is essentially non-existent in the Goleta area. Our industrial spaces are 100% rented. Office spaces, I believe the reason that UCSB's is higher than we're seeing in the paper or in our area is because they include spaces no matter what the size. So they're looking at newer buildings, and the airport, when we pulled the comparables from the news press, we only looked at buildings that were the size of the buildings that we rent or less. We didn't look at anything that was in excess of 6,000 square feet. Warehouse and land comparables are extremely hard to get because there isn't a lot of land out there. The particular warehouse comp, and this was only one that we came across, is only a 605 square foot space, so the rent tends to be higher per square foot. Our spaces tend to be more in the 1,500 square foot area, and I believe this is probably a storage facility that has a rent at this particular rate. On the land, this particular lot that we were looking at in Goleta was in downtown Goleta, and again, I believe it's a smaller lot, and because of the location, it rents for more than our lots are currently going for. So, based on all of these factors, we feel that no changes are really indicated in our current rental rates. These were the rates that were approved, I believe, in 2013. Office rates would be at $1.35 to $1.70. Industrial rates from 95 cents to $1.50. Storage or warehouse rates from 65 to 85 cents. And land from 13 cents to 30 cents. So we're asking tonight for a recommendation that Airport Commission approve the proposed fiscal year 2015 commercial industrial rental rates for land and buildings at the Santa Barbara Airport. Do you have any questions?
Well, just for clarity, since the rates aren't changing, this really has no impact on any established agreements.
No, that's correct. That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And slightly off topic from the rates, have we had any interest in the restaurant location whatsoever? Or?
Not for restaurant use.
Any questions about the rates? Motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve that.
Second.
All in favor of approving the airport commercial industrial lease rates as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Rates are approved.
Thank you.
And thank you. That brings us to item 14, the Part 139 certification inspection.
That's right. I think we put this on the agenda a couple of months ago when we thought we were going to have the inspection in the springtime. First time in forever, FAA pushed it to this month. So with no further ado, I'll have Tracy Lincoln, the ops manager, give you a report.
Thank you very much. We do have an annual inspection each year from the FAA, and for clarification purposes, the airport, the office of the FAA Airports Office is a regional office in Los Angeles. They inspect all of the airports in this region. They inspect facilities and audit records when they're out here. Their main goal is to make sure that we're meeting Federal Aviation Regulation Part 139 and that we're operating as is outlined and approved in our FAA certification manual. So when they come out here, they do a pretty detailed inspection of facilities, meaning we drive the airfield both day and night, and we drive the perimeter. We drive safety areas to validate that they're, cleared, graded, and capable of supporting passage of equipment and vehicles. We also, the inspector does measurements. He brings his wheel with him, and he does measurements, and he was down on all fours several times with a magnifying glass, checking glass beads and markings. So some are more thorough than others. Quick bullet point list of some of the things they look at when they're here. I mentioned we take a look at safety areas, we take a look at markings, lights, signs regarding the actual facility. Then they audit records. The records they audit are our NOTAM records, where we issue notices to airmen for conditions on the airfield that may confuse or misdirect a pilot, or closed surfaces that we have an obligation to issue notices to airmen for that. We have a daily self-inspection program that's approved in the certification manual, where we do the airfield inspection a couple times a day. They inspect all of those records in detail. They look at accident incident reports. They take a close look at the ARF operation, all aspects of that operation. They look at training reports, and then they look at a history of any incursions or issues that have occurred throughout the year. They always meet with the FAA tower manager, excuse me, and they want to check on the relationship and making sure that everything from construction safety plans and alternate routes are coordinated. We did quite well, I'm really pleased to say, and we are looking at a few markings that he wants us to take a look at, and a few things that need to be changed since some standards have recently changed, and so we need to plan for a couple of marking changes on the airfield, and that's really about it. There's some training where all of the subjects were there, and they just wanted to see it summarized a little better, and he basically gave some suggestions on increasing training in certain areas that he's seen at other airports that he has thought helped those staffs a lot, which we appreciate. And he was here for about 3.5 days, including the evening inspection one night where we spent about 2 hours out on the airfield in the evening. I apologize, I did fail to mention that he inspects fuel farms, mobile fuelers, and the training records of the fuelers as well. So it's always an interesting visit, because they usually find something that's been out there for many years that they want changed, but they're good about explaining why, and they're usually reasonable, and they give you reasonable time frames to work with. So learned a lot from them, we always do, and we had a pretty good inspection this year.
Good. Questions? No?
Sounds like an ISO 9001 audit on steroids. So would you say that is 3.5 days typical? I mean, you've been here for a while. These are done annually?
These are done annually, and it's usually 2.5 days, but this was the first time that this inspector had been to this airport, and he wanted to spend a little extra time because he'll be here for 3 years.
It's also a nice place to spend time.
Yeah, they're not an uncommon reaction from inspectors the first time they come out here. But yeah, he did a good job.
And in the ISO 9000 paradigm, you have kind of majors, minors, and observations, where observations would be nice to fix, minors are you got to get on it, majors are stop the presses. I don't know what the criteria are, but essentially nothing.
Nothing major. A couple of minor things being some marking issues where we had, it's a tongue twister, surface painted holding position signs. It's a new requirement as of just a couple of years ago. We painted them a couple of years ago and have just repainted them.
Those are the red signs, right?
Thank you, yes. They are the red
With the beads.
and white signs painted on the surface at hold short positions. They say exactly the same thing as the hold short signs. And we did have some issues with those markings to where the glass beads weren't showing up, and he definitely wants to see those redone. We didn't get a violation or anything because they're done and the glass beads are in there, but we're looking into why they're not as reflective as what we believe they should be. So,
Thank you. Other question? All right, well,
It's amazing.
I'm sure it just acknowledges what a great job you all are doing out there. All right, the director's report.
Keeping this simple this evening, on your report for the statistics that Desi was outlining earlier tonight, our passenger traffic for the month of June is down over 9%. Year to date, 2.6%. So we are seeing that impact with the loss of flights by American Airlines, even though United has increased the size of the aircraft. And seat-wise, we're only 36 seats different. We're less 36 seats. So we're really going to be pushing to make sure we fill all those seats. Also in your report, if I remember correctly, we were asked to put information about fuel cells. And so on the back side of your report, at the bottom, you'll see Jet A cells separately from Avgas, but it gives you the graphs that show cells for those fuels. So we'll continue to keep that up to date, and also when we start getting reports on commercial aviation fuel, we'll add that to the chart as well. So also wanted to mention that we are still, Tracy and I and fire staff are going over the ARF study report, and as soon as we get that completed, we will present it to Airport Commission. The master plan on July 24th, that's next Thursday, at Planning Commission, we'll be holding a scoping hearing for the environmental document. If you are interested and would like to participate, it's first on the agenda right after their consent calendar and that information. And I believe that's all I had for this evening. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. I know United had some years ago said that they were planning to upgrade the equipment to San Francisco. And I guess the question is, have we heard anything about that as to possibly when?
Actually, Commissioner Khan, we do right now have two CRJ 700s going to San Francisco and one CRJ 50, right, or the 500, yeah. So they did that, I think, because there's a need and there's a demand here in Santa Barbara, but also because of the runway construction project that's been going on at San Francisco from May through September. I believe it ends in September. And by having the larger aircraft, it gives us a more of a chance of getting our passengers to San Francisco. There have still been a lot of cancellations of the smaller Embraers, right? Is that right? The smaller planes are not getting in as much. But they did increase that. I believe they've also added a flight to Denver on an RJ, and then Los Angeles. All of their aircraft are RJs going to Los Angeles.
Recognizing that the books are not closed and the numbers are in a state of flux, could you give us a brief comment on revenue and expense against budget?
Yes, we are paying all of the end-of-year bills, and statements are coming in, trying to get all those paid. And the preliminary report that we have indicates that we will be shy of budget, will be short. Right now it looks like probably about $250,000 under budget. Revenues are close to the amount. Operational expenses are good, but then once you add in our debt service and other obligations that we have for some of the other funds, it appears at this point that we will be about $250,000 under budget.
So in summary, we're comfortable.
Well, it's the first time in my history that we've ever been under budget. But then, as you can tell with the employments, those are direct fiscal impacts to us. So we're working to be as conservative as we can be, and also looking for all revenue sources that might be on the horizon. We're interested in doing that. And I think having, as Rebecca pointed out, having the two facilities leased and that revenue coming in, that's going to assist us as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? All right. Well, I guess with that, you're adjourned. Have a good evening. Thank you.